I mean, I'd be the first one to acknowledge that between 2021 and 2022, the MCU released way too many TV shows and movies. And I mean, and honestly, I don't think anyone was really that disappointed when Marvel announced they were going to focus more on quality versus quantity. But still, it is a little bit of a bummer because I think without as many TV shows, you wouldn't get little gems like Miss Marvel. Here's hoping that the MCU continues to make shows like this because for the most part, this is what the superhero genre needs. Hello everybody, welcome back to Access Blockbusters, and welcome to a look back on the 2022 MCU Disney Plus show in Phase 4, Miss Marvel. If you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like and let me know in the comments down below what you think of Miss Marvel. Do you like this show more than Loki, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye? And do you think Kamala Khan is one of the better characters that the MCU has ever produced, or do you not like her as much as I do? Let me know in the comments down below. And again, make sure to subscribe for more content just like this coming your way. As always, these videos are broken up into 3 parts. The first is my background and context with this show, what was going on around the time of the release, as well as some of my overall thoughts the first time I had seen the show. The second part of this video will be my updated thoughts upon having rewatched the show, and then the third part will be whether or not those thoughts have changed substantially since the first time. So, with all that out of the way, again, make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. Let's get into Miss Marvel. So 2022 was an interesting year for the MCU because they had announced they were going to release 3 Disney Plus series. Now, the Disney Plus series that they had released in 2021 were all based on existing characters. WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, and Hawkeye. And even What If you want to count that as well. But 2022 was different because 2022 was going to use Disney Plus to introduce to the MCU 3 brand new characters. Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, and She-Hulk. I think Moon Knight, as you might have seen in my rewatch video and also my initial reviews, did a pretty successful job in introducing Oscar Isaac's character into the MCU, although the show itself was a little bit rocky. Didn't know that much about She-Hulk by the time that Miss Marvel had released, so I was a little skeptical, to be honest. I wasn't that excited about Miss Marvel just because I didn't know that much about her. And yeah, admittedly, it was about at this point that I went, maybe we should start slowing down the content a little bit because, I mean, it's a lot, right? And to have all these shows come out and you just don't know these characters and some of them are hit and miss, you're like, maybe we should just kind of, ramp it up a little bit more slowly and introduce these characters in the movies because all the movies that came out this year, Doctor Strange 2, Thor 4, and Black Panther 2, were based on existing characters. So I thought that was an interesting shift in the dynamic. That being said, the first trailer, and I think the only trailer, was actually quite entertaining, and I enjoyed the tone quite a bit because it really dug into a stylistic tone of a high school movie, high school show, the John Hughes kind of vibe, even kind of Spider-Man Homecoming, if you will, which took inspiration from John Hughes. But I think it was allowed to go a little further because in Spider-Man Homecoming, you couldn't really have the graphics all around. But in Miss Marvel, it looked like you had all the graphics moving around, the fun transitions, all that kind of stuff. And then you had yet another brilliant casting decision, even just based on the trailer, in Kamala Khan and Iman Vellani. And so I was looking forward to the show. Captain Marvel itself, the movie, was not my favorite MCU movie. And I know that this show didn't have much to do with Captain Marvel, just the 2 properties, but I knew that the character would be referenced, and it just didn't add up to me being all that excited. That being said, and you'll know this because I did episode by episode breakdowns of all 6 episodes of Miss Marvel. You can go check out my initial thoughts on the show on the YouTube channel. I just fell in love with the Kamala Khan character and the Khan family in the first 3 episodes at least. The first 3 episodes to me are perhaps some of the strongest pieces of content that the MCU has ever made. And I know I keep saying that because it's true. I mean, the first half of Loki, the first couple episodes at least of Loki are just incredibly strong. The first little bit of Moon Knight, really incredible. But I have to say, and I can't see She-Hulk topping this. I'm sorry, I can't see She-Hulk topping any of this, but I might definitively say for me, as of the recording of this video, that the first 3 episodes, the first half of Miss Marvel, is the best first half of any MCU Disney Plus show that they've made. And I just find it hard to beat because the family dynamic is so authentic, the cultural elements are so authentic, Kamala Khan is so authentically just genuine, such a genuine character, and then also the stylistic elements of the show, the wedding, like I mentioned before, all the graphics on the walls of the sides of buildings, and then, of course, all of the elements to the Avengers, the references to the MCU, her supporting cast of Bruno and Nakia. It just felt authentic. It felt like a sitcom in the MCU in the best way possible, where we were just living in the life of somebody in the MCU, and I just love that. That being said, the next couple episodes fell flat, the ones where she went to Pakistan for me, and then by the time they wrapped up the series, it was a little bit too little too late. So going into this rewatch, that was sort of on my mind. Was the show going to fall off a cliff after episode 3? And here's what I will say about that. We will go more in chronological order, but I just want to say up front that while I was bracing myself for a severe drop-off in quality, because that's frankly what I experienced the first time, I don't think episodes 4 and 5 and 6 to a lesser extent fell off as much as I thought they were going to. Not nearly as good as the first 3 episodes, certainly not. but not nearly as bad as I remember them being. That being said, let's start from the beginning. Let's go from the first episode, and then we'll kind of work our way throughout all the twists and turns of the show. This show opens with Kamala Khan literally being a YouTuber, and one of the things I wrote in my notes is just Kamala is one of us. I love that about the character. She is somehow so relatable and yet so seamlessly able to fit into a universe that is full of superheroes and aliens and monsters. It's unbelievable how good of a job the writers did with the first few episodes of establishing how a character like Kamala Khan can live in the world of the MCU. Again, just to reiterate, I've said it many times already, but the style of the show, the graphics, all the little animations that pop up, the things that appear on the walls, the text messages. I love the text messages appearing in the designs of the buildings, like the neon signs. Just amazing. This is really, I think, a perfect recipe of how a director, or a set of directors, I guess, can give their unique style into the MCU while also being in the MCU, not feeling like it's completely dissonant. I think, and we'll get to She-Hulk in a couple weeks, but I think from what I remember, She-Hulk was sort of the other extreme where it just felt too stylized and maybe not enough in the MCU, for example. And then you have something like, I don't know, just reaching into the bag of MCU, like Thor the Dark World just kind of felt very MCU generic. But I think that if anyone has the complaint of the MCU doesn't allow directors to express their creativity, I can't disagree more just based on Miss Marvel. I know that, you know, you wish you could have more of this in the movies and the bigger productions, but still, this is fantastic. And really, the rest of the episode is just establishing the supporting cast, the family. I love the family. Each of the characters, the mom, the dad, the brother's wife, fiance. Bruno's a great character. Naki's a great character. Everybody, I mean, Zoe's a character, but she's not really that important to the show. But all the characters are just so well-rounded because they feel real. The high school feel, it feels real. It feels like how Ned Leeds and MJ are real characters. In the Spider-Man corner, that's how I feel about these characters. They feel real. And what's also so real about this show is that it deals with human emotion. I mean, the first couple episodes barely deal with Kamala being Miss Marvel. There are some training scenes in the second episode, and there's the whole saving the kid scene in the second episode, but the first episode just focuses on her being a kid with her family. And I have to say, the scene where she is wanting to go to AvengerCon, and her parents finally say yes, and then her dad shows up wearing the Hulk costume, and they're so excited, and she just breaks their hearts. It's devastating. I mean, it's one of the most heartbreaking scenes I've seen in the MCU because you just feel the raw emotion between the characters. You feel the disappointment, the hurt, the sorrow, the guilt, the shame. It's all there. And that's what I love about this first episode, is that it brings out the real human emotion. And then there's a line later on which speaks to the even deeper themes of the show about the culture and the race relations and being a Muslim in America. Of Kamala saying to Bruno at one point, I don't know if it was episode 1 or 2, but she says, "It's not the brown girls in Jersey City who become superheroes," or something to that effect. And Bruno says, "Why not? Why can't you be?" And I thought, I mean, that's just such a great message to have, you know, that Kamala is one of us, but she's more than just one of us in terms of she's a kid. She's representing so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and I love that about this show. So then we get introduced to Kamran, and Kamran, I think, as a stand-in for the high school crush is cool. I have a lot of thoughts to say about Kamran as a villain or an anti-hero or just a general, I don't know, MacGuffin at the end of the show, but we'll get to that in a second. But then you're more introduced to Damage Control. And look, I mean, Damage Control are suitably just terrible. They're jerks, and you just hate them. But I think that was the intention of the show. And honestly, I would have been fine with Damage Control just being the villains of this show. That's something that became more and more obvious to me as we went along. But, I mean, this show just didn't need as many villains as it had. But, again, we'll get there. Second episode, though, is more of the same, which is a good thing, by the way. It's a great thing, though we're spending more time with Kamala's family. We're getting to know her as a character. She's beginning to tap into her powers a little bit. They have the whole nightlight scene at the mosque where she saves the kid. But, again, not that much superheroing, if you will. Until she meets Najma. So then we head into the third episode, which is the wedding episode at the end. But this is where the clandestines are entered into the scene. And for the most part, I actually think in episode 3, they're okay. Like, I think the character of Najma is okay. How many times have we seen, an alien race or an alien species wants to return to their home, or I guess they're not aliens, they're jinn or extraterrestrial beings or interdimensional beings or whatever. They want to return home. Superhero protagonist or hero protagonist has the way to get them home. Hero protagonist doesn't think it's safe. Then they get into a fight, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Spider-Man No Way Home even just did something similar, right? Honestly, though, the best parts of episode 3 are the wedding. There's also a great conversation between Kamala and her mom. and they talk about just the struggles and the pain that they're going through, and they begin to bond and relate to one another. But then the clandestines show up again, and Najma kind of makes her villain turn, and that's when the show kind of dips a little bit. Now, this is where we get into the Pakistan episodes, and like I have reiterated many times in those individual episode breakdowns, it's not the fact that they go to Pakistan and they explore that part of the world and that part of the culture that I dislike about the show. Not at all. In fact, if they did an entire season 2 where they explored this in depth and they explored the Red Daggers and they explored all of that culture and all of that backstory with Aisha, would have loved that. Would still love that, honestly. It's the fact that it just didn't feel like it was part of this show. You know, it felt like it was a dissonant, disparate part that just kind of got put in there when in reality the show should have just focused on Kamala, her family in Jersey City, at the mosque, in high school, focusing on all of her problems with damage control, I think. I just don't see a need to put the clandestines in this show, honestly. I mean, it's just even weird logistically. I always think about, like, how can Kamala just leave? She's going to school. I understand that the grandma said you need to come urgently until they went, but it feels like a very lazy writer excuse, like we just got to get them from point A to point B without a really great explanation for why. Something that I wrote in my notes, actually, is that this little subplot feels like a side quest in a video game, and it feels like that's totally fine if you have a 13 episode season where you can kind of explore different pockets of the world and different pockets, but when you have 6 episodes, you just gotta focus up and tell one story. So again, I actually really do like almost everything that's within episode 4 where you're exploring the culture and she's going around Pakistan and just learning about her culture and the heritage. I think that's amazing, actually. It just doesn't feel like it's part of the show. And then the Red Daggers are just another shoehorn thrown in group of people. Like, we already have Kamran, we already have the clandestines and Najma and her family and Nakia and Bruno, and now you have to enter in Waleed and Kareem, and it doesn't feel authentic because, I mean, we spend literally 20 minutes with Waleed and then he dies? Like, what am I supposed to make of that, honestly? I say a similar thing about episode 5, the entire backstory episode where Kamala time travels, which I've read interviews where the head writer, I believe Bisha K. Ali, says that she wrote on Loki, which she did, and it makes sense to her. It might make sense if you really map the whole thing out and compare it to the TVA time travel logic and the endgame time travel. I don't really care. It doesn't make that much sense that it's a closed loop and Kamala can go back and become the trail of stars that her grandmother follows. It feels weird. It just doesn't feel like it fits with the show. And then you spend 30 minutes of the episode on backstory with her mother, or her great-grandmother and her great-grandfather, which again is cool. And if the show had time for that, I would have really enjoyed spending time with these characters. The fact of the matter is, this is episode 5, and we need to wrap things up. And my gosh, the scene where Najma sacrifices herself to close the veil, or close the rift between the dimensions, is the cringiest acting scene. For the most part, the actress who plays Najma does a pretty good job for what she's been given, but for whatever reason, that scene, I just cringed because she was like, I'm doing this for Kamran, and then she dies. And I was like, what in the world is happening? And then she turns into a skeleton. So, yeah. Luckily, episode 6 gets us back on track, and it finishes out relatively strong. I think all the parts that still have to do with the clandestines, including Kamran and his random powers and what even that means, I have no idea. All that kind of stuff didn't work, but the stuff about escaping damage control in the high school, it is goofy. It is admittedly very goofy, and throwing softballs at them and making slime and all that kind of stuff, but it fits the tone of the show, you know? And that's really what the MCU needs, is just consistency throughout the show. And this show, other than here and there with the diversion to Pakistan, this show felt very consistent all the way through. It's a high school coming of age show. Do her powers look a little CGI? Yeah, I mean, sure. But again, at the end of the day, I think that the episode just ended very strongly. It tied up all the loose ends of the first 3 episodes, and it brought together some of the threads of episodes 4 and 5 that I just didn't think were that interesting. The show ends, and she's a mutant, which is exciting, I think, and that's Miss Marvel. And look, if the show had one job, right? The show had one job to endear us to the character of Kamala Khan. Mission accomplished. This show did a phenomenal job to set her up for movies like The Marvels, where the whole family is coming back and she's coming back, because Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan is wonderful, fantastic, just completely charismatic. That being said, I do think that the show suffers from a lack of structure once again. It has a very strong tone for the most part, but it diverges at certain points. But I think, just comparing this now to the first time I saw the show, it didn't bother me as much because I guess I knew what I was expecting. I knew it was going to come. And I mean, yes, it's still jarring and it's still a little frustrating that this show just wasn't in Jersey City the entire time at the mosque and at the high school and with the Khan family. But at the end of the day, I think that a lot of the elements within episodes 4 and 5 I was able to appreciate more just because I understood thematically what they were talking about. And if that's the case, then I think that this show could have done a lot worse. So again, I think that this is a huge success for Disney Plus. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but I would say out of the 6, is it 6 now? Yeah, 6 live action Disney Plus shows that I've rewatched thus far, this is definitely in the bucket of a win. Huge win for Marvel. So what do you guys think of Miss Marvel? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you enjoy the character of Kamala Khan as much as I do? Do you like the show as much as I do? Do you like it less than I do? Let me know in the comments down below. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.